The T-800 Terminator is one of the most iconic machine designs in sci-fi, and today we're going to learn to draw it. So strap yourself in, relax, grab a sketchbook, and let's draw the T-800. Hey everyone, Tyler here, and I'm a freelance concept artist. Now, as you can see, I'm starting off this demo straight away with simple shapes, okay? So I'm starting off with a study straight from reference, okay? And this is something that you must do. It's very important when you want to redraw something that's already been designed in a different pose, in a custom angle. You know, you need to first study the shapes, the forms of this subject, right? In our case here, the T-800. So I'm jumping in with a very rudimental and primitive, simple shapes, okay? Almost like a stick man, because this is my underdrawing. This is for me to understand the pose, to understand the perspective and the angle of the T-800 here. So always start by first studying the T-800, right? Your subject. So you want to go ahead and find a reference like I have here, and you want to redraw this reference. Now, the T-800 is extremely complex, okay? It's a very complicated, very complex design. Now, when you're drawing with a line, you're gonna have to simplify in some areas, or you're gonna spend hundreds of hours on one piece. Now, if you want to spend hundreds of hours on a single drawing, then that is totally fine. That's up to you. However, for me, I don't want to spend 100 hours on a single drawing like this, especially a study. I just want to understand the shapes, the forms that are being used, and some of the details. Now, the details when doing a drawing it's more about believability than realism, okay? In concept art, it's something that we kind of live by, where it's more about a believable subject, a believable design, rather than a realistic design, okay? You can stick certain details in certain areas, and as a human beings, our brain will go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Or if there isn't a detail somewhere where you would expect it, you would also notice that and go, why isn't there a piston there? Or why isn't there a wire there, you know? Like you can see on the design, there are wires coming on the shoulders. This is obviously hydraulic fluid, right? You can see it coming from the shoulder into the chest area. That wire is maybe some sort of hydraulic fluid, some oil, stuff like that, to keep the joints lubricated. So as you can see here, I'm going into rough sketching it, okay? Almost finished the torso here. This is my rough sketch, and with this study, I'm not gonna take it any further than a rough sketch. I could clean it up, spend, you know, an hour and a half cleaning it up and doing nice line work, but that isn't the goal with this study. The goal is the forms, understanding the angle and the pose and how everything goes together. So with this, I'm just going to stay with a rough sketch before, and after this we will move into a demo where I repose the T-800 in my own custom pose from a figure pack that I have, more of a heroic, you know, standing pose. You saw it at the beginning there. So I'm just finishing up here. You know, watch carefully how I'm really just roughing in those pistons and hydraulic parts, and I'm not worrying about too much about beauty, right? I'm making it beautiful. It's about understanding my subject. I need to understand the forms, the shapes, where certain details go to, because those kind of pistons, they add to the functionality, right? And for a lot of you, if there's anyone here that is a super Terminator fan, these kind of details, like having the pistons here, right, from the rib cage area down to the pelvis area, that's quite a big detail that you would notice if it's missing. There's lots of stuff in here in the shoulder area where you can really play around with that, and you can add and subtract. And this is, you know, as an artist, you have that creative freedom, okay? The T-800 that you are drawing, it doesn't have to be a one-to-one, 100% copy with every single little detail in the right place, unless that is your goal with the drawing. But for most people, you just want to draw a believable T-800, right? You want someone to look at that and go, yeah, that's a Terminator. So there are lots of small details where I'm not adding them in. I'm even adding some things in areas. I'm adding a few more wires, like hydraulic fluid wires. And that's as an artist, that's your creative freedom. You're allowed to do that. There's nobody saying that you're not allowed to do that. So we're jumping in here now with the custom pose. I'm going in using the exact same method, okay, of really just blocking it in. This is a similar thing you would do in 3D, okay? Any 3D artists out there, you block things in with simple shapes and then you build on top of that. And exactly what I'm doing here. This for me is one of the best ways, especially with characters and creatures, and especially if you're new to drawing or you're not really an avid drawer, but you just want to draw the T-800 because you think it's really cool. Use this method, okay? Just try to think in simple shapes. You know, take like the legs here. The fire area of the T-800 doesn't look like that. It's not just a box, right? But to simplify this, that's what I'm doing. I'm putting it all into one box, into one simple shape, so that I can draw on top of that afterwards, okay? And that's what's really important. So even with the hands here, I'm going a bit more complex than I need to, but because of my level, I can do that. If you really struggle with some things, just simplify, and then draw on top, which I'm doing here. I'm going to go in with a rough sketch again. I'm not going to go in with trying to make it super clean. And there's coming up soon after this rough sketch, you'll see a nice some storytelling and some creative freedoms that I'm taking to kind of set dress this T-800 and to add it more into its environment and what it's up to. And that's, again, you have the creative freedom to add and subtract, and to add storytelling elements, things like that. Especially if you're looking to become a concept artist, then definitely you should be focusing on design and storytelling, and the clarity and the line work skills, the painting skills will come as you design. It's a mistake that I made. I really focused on being as technical as possible and having the best drawing skills, and knowing how to add basic colors and flat colors and basic shadows, and I neglected design for a while, and really should have focused on that, especially if you're being a concept artist, because your entire role is to design and to be a problem solver for studios, companies. So I'm adding in the pelvis area here, and what's interesting is I'm mostly using the older design, but I am looking at some references of a 3D model that somebody made that I found on Google Images, which they took a lot of creative freedoms and they made it a lot more complex, a lot more modern, but still absolutely looks like an older T-800. So adding in the front thigh plate here and the piston behind, going into the shoulder area, and just pay attention to how I'm basically scribbling, right? That's what a rough sketch is. It's about being able to quickly add in all of the details, all of the forms in the right place. You can really play around and really improve all of the details. So, and I do like to challenge myself at times, and I try to draw something straight away without an underdrawing, and sometimes I succeed and sometimes I don't. But it is if you want to improve as an artist, you do have to challenge yourself, and you do have to push yourself, really have to push yourself out of your comfort zone, because it's outside of your comfort zone is where you're going to learn, is where you're going to improve. And sometimes that is why you may see someone who's only been doing art for 2 or 3 years or 4 years, and you've been doing it for 10 years, let's say, and they're better than you, right? Technically, their technical skill is better, and you might be thinking, why are their technical skill better than mine? You have to ask yourself, in these 10 years, how much have I pushed myself out of my comfort zone to improve, right? Because that person might have been constantly pushing themselves outside of their comfort zone, and then they improved quicker. So here is a nice little storytelling and my own little details I'm adding in to this design, and that is the clothing, right? So the T-800, you had the warrior class, but the T-800 was mostly like infiltrator classes to infiltrate resistance cells. So I'm adding in some ripped, tattered clothing, some neck scarf, and some trousers and knee pads, things like that, to make it look like it's an old infiltrator model, right? It's been out there for a long time doing its job. Its skin's pretty much gone, its clothes are all ripped up, and it just hasn't gone back to home base in a while, right? And I definitely took inspiration from the T-600 from Terminator Salvation. That was such a great movie, and that T-600 just probably been patrolling for decades out there in that city area, and that was just really cool. I love that broken, weathered, tattered look. It's just something that I really love, find it very inspiring. So here I'm just adding in the kind of jacket, and I'm adding in some ripped trousers, basically shorts now. And some may be thinking, oh, but you're covering up so much of the endoskeleton of the T-800 with this, and why didn't you just sketch in this straight away? To be honest, because I was just planning to go with the endoskeleton, and then I basically came towards the end of it and I started to think more like a concept artist, right, which is my job. I'm thinking, how can I improve this? How can I make this more interesting as a design? So that's when I started to research, and I thought about the T-600 from Terminator Salvation. I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. Let me reference that. Let me find some pictures. I even rewatched that scene and did my research, and then thought, yeah, let's add some storytelling. Let's make this look like an old infiltrator T-800. He's been out in the field for a long time now, doing his job, hunting down resistance cells, and hasn't gone back to home base to get repaired or maintenance for a long time. He's just keeps hunting those resistance fighters. Adding in some knee pads, and I really couldn't make my mind up with the kind of shape and design I wanted to go with the knee pads, and definitely struggled with the knee pads for some reason. You'll find that sometimes, doesn't matter how advanced you are as an artist, there's always going to be these little things that you think are going to be super easy to draw, and they end up being really difficult. And that's just basically what happened with the knee pads. I just couldn't make my mind up with the shape of them, and then the perspective of them was looking weird. I was like, okay, let me just leave it. I ended up just leaving it rough and coming back to it, and then playing around with it more later on in the clean line drawing, which we'll come up to soon. And the clean line drawing is when it really comes to life. So yeah, try to think think creatively. Instead of just drawing the T-800, how can you improve upon the design? There's nothing, there's no law, there's no nothing that says that you cannot have the creative freedom to take a design that's already done, like the T-800, and change it and improve upon it, and make it your own. And we've seen people do that with Warhammer a lot, right? There's lots of small miniature companies out there that take big inspiration from the Warhammer 40k universe, but they make the designs enough their own where they avoid any copyright laws, and they look different enough. Even though you look at it and you go, oh, that's a Space Marine, but according to law, they're fine, right? So you have that creative freedom as an artist to play around with designs, even if they're iconic, right? Xenomorph, Predators, T-800. You can take these designs and you can play around with them and improve upon them. You don't have to do a one-to-one copy of them. You have the right to change that. So just finishing I'm doing the clean line work now and making it more clear, improving the clarity, And this will be the final line. And this is where I take more of my time. So the clean line drawing took, I don't know, an hour and a half. You know, I could definitely spend 3-4 hours on it and it would be even cleaner and much more clear, but it's not necessary. You don't have to. You spend as much time on something as you want, right? And I will say that if you're trying to learn, sometimes you don't need to spend as much time on something as you think, right? Once you feel like you've got the knowledge you needed or wanted from that practice, that's it. Move on to the next one. But comment down below, what is your favorite Terminator? Which one's your favorite? Let me know in the comments. And also, if I should draw it next, right? If you want me to do any more Terminators, let me know in the comments which ones. Maybe you would even like me to try and design from descriptions, right? There's a lot of Terminators out there that only have descriptions. There's no images of them. There's no drawings. There's no concepts. Just a description. So if that's something that interests you, go ahead and subscribe or hit that bell and let me know in the comments which Terminator you would like me to do. So going into the face here, as you can see, I really did enjoy having just that one kind of two-face thing, right? So he's got that skin hanging, just kind of still stuck to that one side, but the rest of it's been ripped off or fallen off over the years of being out in the field hunting down resistance fighters. And we're going to do now is head into the neck area. I'm going to add in those details. And to be honest, some of the details, they don't have to be super clear because our brains know, okay, there's lots going on in the neck area. There's lots going on in the shoulder area. There's lots of pistons and pipes and wires. You can add in lines and our brains will just make up the rest. They will just be like, okay, we have, you know, your brain knows that there's stuff going on in there and will just make up the rest of the details. Like, okay, that's a wire, that's a piston. Great. So adding in some random lines in the neck just for the brain to go, okay, that's a piston, that's a wire. And into the chest area, decided to add a bit of a belt that's just kind of hanging there, really, on the pelvis area. And I continue to have those wires sticking out, you know, almost like the shoulder is ripped and the wires are still sticking out of that part of the jacket. Added the pouches and a pocket on that side, because that's the side that the viewer is seeing the most, so I did in a little bit more detail there. But on the other side, I tried to keep it more of a rest area and not have too much detail there. But the T-800 kind of does defy a little bit the kind of rest versus detail, right? In concept art, we have rest areas, detailed areas. But the T-800, you know, it's not a hard and fast rule. It's more of a guideline that allows you to kind of play with that. So you can have, you know, detail rest, or you cannot, right? And you can have areas that are just much more detailed. However, I like to try and play around with the rest versus detail, because I found that if there's too much detail in one area, or just everywhere, too much detail. I've seen it on designs before where the design is actually pretty good, but there's just too much detail everywhere. And you'll even see that with creature designs, you have lots of scales. They will try to add scales in just kind of certain areas where common sense would say you'd have them, right? Like the shoulder area, the back, the head, those areas that would get damaged more. No, but even the T-800, if you try to think of it in a realistic manner, it's kind of not great as a warrior kind of machine, because all of the bits are exposed. But that's what's so amazing about entertainment content, right? Entertainment designs for games and movies, you can play around and you don't have to stick to realism. You can just say, okay, as long as it's believable, great, right? Because the T-800 is so iconic. But if you thought of it in a realistic way, with all of the pistons and wires exposed, those important hydraulic wires that are pumping the fluid and oil, if you just shot one of those off, the arm might just stop working, right? Or if you shoot the pistons in the hand, it would just break. So obviously they do have a very strong metal, right? So that's one way to, in the law, that you can get away with that. But that's what's amazing about entertainment design. You have so much freedom to really play around. So just finishing off the final bits here. Again, in the foot, I'm not going to go in a lot of detail. This is another thing to think about, is that the human eye is immediately going to go to the face, right? And then work its way down. So you can add in more detail, more clarity, more interest in the top part. And as it goes down, you add less detail, less clarity. It doesn't need to be as detailed because people are usually not just going to stare at feet unless, that's your thing. But the feet, I decided, they just add some lines in there. It doesn't need to be super detailed. And again, this is not a drawing that, I spent 5-6 hours on. And here we are, coming to the end of the final line work, just adding in this rock, and then we're going to add in the color, right, to really bring it to life and make it pop. And again, decided to go with more resistance looking clothing, as you'll see when I go into color. Here I'm just adding a little bit more clarity by adding in line weight. Line weight is super important. You can add it in the shadow areas or on the outside lines. This just helps to basically add more clarity to the line work, because if it's all just one weight, as in one thickness, then that's when it can lose its clarity. So, and then the neck scarf, and I went with a red on green. Okay, so I could have gone with a more tan neck scarf. However, if you know your color theory, red and green are complementary colors. So I decided to play with that a bit and add in sort of a maroon red neck scarf and a green jacket. And then I played around with the shorts, went with a more tan kind of green, brown belts, adding in the darker green in the inside for the shadow, and then played around with the color of the pouches. I didn't want these pouches to be the exact same color as the jacket, so I pushed that a little bit and went with a more of a brown, again for the buckles, green military type knee pads. And then again, because this is not like a super full painting, I'm just adding in more flat colors and some highlights and shadows, but this wasn't intended to be a masterpiece, right? It's just a fun drawing. However, coming to the end here, and I really hope that you all enjoyed it. For those who made it to the end, thank you so much for watching, and please do subscribe, hit that bell notification, and give me some suggestions in the comments. I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and I'm really enjoying to make these. I've got tons planned, so many videos planned, lots of sci-fi characters from movies and games, plus my own designs planned. But yeah, adding in some shadow, darker areas, and some highlights. And then finally, I will finish off with the weapon and the skin on the face. And then the rock, of course. I really hope that those of you that made it to the end here, did learn something from this and I'm up for feedback and suggestions in the comments. You know, should I make these shorter, longer? Should they be slowed down, more detailed? Let me know, because that's something I'm trying to figure out on my end, as I don't have a big audience yet. So I need any of you who are watching, your suggestions to help grow this channel. So hit the like, subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video. Thanks very much for watching. Bye bye.